Good morning, everyone. My name is Michelle Miller, and I am here from ARINGO MBA Admissions Consulting, here with what I hope is a very relevant topic and will be probably in future seasons as well. But here to help you, or at least give you some preliminary advice on whether or not you should apply in round 2 versus next round or even next year. So we'll go through a few different scenarios. Again, thanks for joining us this morning. Sorry, it's morning for me. I'm in Portland, Oregon, so hello to all my West Coasters that are still waking up. But good afternoon and good evening to all of you in different parts of the world. Okay, let's go ahead and get started. So just a quick intro. And excuse me, by the way, speaking of me, I'm getting over a cold, so please forgive me if I occasionally have to straighten my throat. But again, I'm Michelle. I just told you I'm in Portland. A couple fun things about me. I've been with ARINGO for 4 years now, which means that I've worked in higher education for 11 years. Yikes, goes by quickly. I joined ARINGO because I am actually a PhD candidate for the study of higher education administration. So higher ed admissions, this is very much my cup of tea. And I really enjoy helping people with their goals of getting into business school and then everything that follows. Found a very passionate team at ARINGO that's like-minded, so feel free to come speak to us. I usually share some hobbies and stuff. How about I just tell you, my husband and I just had our 15th anniversary. We have 2 dogs. That takes up a lot of time, and we love watching Netflix shows. So a quick note here about ARINGO, just so you'll know who we are. We have been in business for, gosh, almost 15 years now, hard to believe also. In that time, we've helped over 4,000 applicants get into top 10 MBAs. Down below here, you can see some of our admission statistics, where the school's admissions rate compared to the ARINGO rate in blue. And if you'd like to see even more of our admission statistics or even broken down year by year, check out our website. It's aringo.com. Funny name, I know, but good way to remember. As we have our statistics frequently updated and verified by Ernst & Young. All right, now to the part that you actually came here to hear about. Should you apply in round 2? So this is an overview of what we're going to be discussing today. We're going to talk about those rounds and what they mean, because round 2 at one school is not the same as round 2 at another. We're going to do a little bit of a self-check, kind of some early questions you can ask yourself to possibly answer your own question of should you apply in round 2. Profile considerations, that's getting a little more specific about things you should think about in terms of when to apply. And where are you in the application process? And below are just a few things that I'm going to go over specifically. So starting out with rounds. As I noted here, many schools, especially the top 10 and 20, operate in a simple 3-round process. It's typically fall, winter, spring, or September, October, December, January, March, April-ish for each one, give or take a few weeks. Excuse me. However, with that being said, I've noted here that there's oftentimes not a huge difference in the admissions rates between round 1 and round 2. By the way, just a quick note in case you're wondering, round 3, on the other hand, does tend to be much more competitive. So that's part of what you need to keep in mind today, is that if you're applying to a 3-round school and you decide not to apply in round 2, you might be better off waiting until round 1 next year. But we'll get into that in more detail. With that said, down below, I've noted that there's a few, excuse me, there's a few exceptions. Harvard and Stanford. In fact, if you Google Poets and Quants, they have an excellent article where they studied the admissions rates at top 20 programs and discussed the differences in the admissions rates. They found that Harvard and Stanford were the 2 schools that had the biggest disparity in terms of admitting quite a few more people in round 1 versus round 2. Another exception here is with early decision programs. I noted the example of Columbia. Columbia on paper appears to be a 3-round school because they have their early decision deadline the same as their round 1, and then they do have a round 2 and a round 3. But you really should think of it in terms of because their early decision receives such a high number of applications, by the time you get to round 2, it really is more like a round 3. they've already admitted so many people as part of early decision in round one. So you should factor in how much more competitive the school is going to be as time goes on. On the flip side, in the middle here, I've noted that when you're looking at a school that has 4 rounds or more, for example, Cornell has 4 rounds, INSEAD has 5. That's very true with many European programs, by the way, that they'll have 5 rounds. In that case, round 2 is not nearly as sensitive of a point. It's like it's pretty much the same as round 1. You should go ahead and apply if you are prepared to do so, which is the theme of today's conversation. Because round 3 for them is not the end. There's still a few more rounds. So here's the self-check that I promised you. A couple things I'd like you to consider. First things first, when did you decide to apply? In other words, when did you decide that you want to go to business school? And then close follow-up, when did you decide on round 2? The reason I'm asking you these questions specifically is because, first of all, an MBA is not at all a light undertaking. It's a big project just to apply. You've probably heard the running adage by now that the hardest part of business school is getting into business school. And they're not just talking about the competitiveness. They are also referring to what a chore or task it is to go through this application process, and then you have to do it multiple times if you are wisely, hint, hint, applying to more than one school. So if you have just recently had an epiphany that, hey, I should go to business school, that's okay, but you probably shouldn't do it now, because this is a process where most candidates have been planning for at least 2 years. Now, when did you decide on round 2? That's why this question comes out specifically, because even if you've been thinking about maybe going to business school for a while, but again, you've just recently had an epiphany that, hey, why not this year? Again, round 2 might not be the best time for you, depending on where you are in the process. And we'll talk more about that in a moment. How many application rounds are there at each school? Again, remembering that round 2 at one school or round 3 at one school is different than round 3 at another. But we just went over that. Are you working on your essays? Now, please don't panic if you are not. I hope you are. But this doesn't mean that if the answer is no, then you're done and you should close the book. But I'm hoping that at this point you will have at least read the prompts and begun some brainstorming. Even if that brainstorming is in your head, you just start walking around thinking about it. What do I want to do with my MBA? Or why am I so attracted to NYU Stern? Very generic examples here, but I'm hoping that you have at least taken a look at them to begin the process, even if it's a little bit subconsciously. If you haven't looked yet, round 2 deadlines are coming up very quickly, with a few exceptions. Most of them are in December and January. You do need to get started right now. Also, are you working with an expert like ARINGO, of course? However, I promise this is not just my shameless sales tactic. This is an important part, because especially if you haven't started yet, or if you have any concerns about your profile, frankly, if you have any concerns at all about the process, that is what experienced firms like ARINGO are for. So this is a good question to ask yourself too, is who's helping you with this? Have you taken the GMAT or the GRE? And note, lots of emphasis here, for the final time. There are many candidates who I've spoken to right now who are prepping for their second, third, sometimes fourth or fifth GMAT or GRE take. It is quite common. That doesn't mean you can't apply in round 2, but it means that you need to look seriously at your schedule and how you're going to manage study preparation along with application preparation. Now, you'll notice I put some asterisks next to a few of the big ones, and down here at the bottom, I've explained why. This is something that we repeat frequently to candidates, especially in the spring and summer, that they should be working on their round 1 applications now. So yes, that means that if you're working on a round 2 application, or excuse me, if you're planning on applying round 2, then yes, you should be working on it already. Okay, so some personal things to consider about when you personally should apply. This doesn't even have to be about round 2 specifically. This advice carries at any time, but here are things that you should be thinking about. First of all, years of work experience. This is especially relevant if you've just recently decided that you want to get an MBA, Or maybe you've been thinking about it for a while, but you've just recently decided you want to do it now. Do you have enough work experience to be competitive? And tying this back to round two, think about this in terms of the fact that they've already admitted usually a pretty good number of candidates in the first round. How are you going to stack up when they have fewer spots to give away than they did before? I put age in air quotes and parentheses here. That's because I'm sure there's a few people joining us today who have this concern. You hear a lot of talk about MBA over 30 or being too experienced to go to business school. And oftentimes it's a bit of a time saver. People cut right to, well, how old are you? What year did you graduate from college? It's not so much that the admissions committees care how old you are, but what they are thinking about is that most of the time, of course, your age is a direct correlator to how much work experience you have. Therefore, if you've been working for 10 years since graduating from college, are you going to fit in with the rest of the class who on average has 3 to 5 years of work experience? Are you going to feel like Uncle Bill or Aunt Sarah? Or are you going to have as much to learn from them as they are from you? These are things to think about. The reason I brought this up here in relation to when should you apply is that this is one time where candidates often find that maybe I do need to hurry up, hustle, get my application in now because I don't want to have even more work experience if I hold off until next year. In addition, these are some quick questions I go to when people call and ask me if they should apply now versus next year. What will next year look like? Peek into your crystal ball. Of course, some things really are unforeseen, but many candidates I speak to have a career trajectory where they know that if they were to wait 3 more months, for example, that they are going to receive a promotion, perhaps to associate, VP, partner, etc. That might be a good reason to wait until next year so that you have that promotion on your application. Same thing goes for other accomplishments, whether you're going to be leading a major project at work, closing a huge sale that you're working on, or step outside of work. Are you working on an extracurricular activity? Perhaps you oversee a board at a charity, or you volunteer at a religious institution or an animal shelter, etc. And you know that if you were to wait until next year, you'd be able to speak to a notable accomplishment. That might be something to think about too. Which leads me directly to extracurricular activities, volunteering. Do you not have them? That might be a reason to think about whether or not to apply. That's a question that is much more detailed. Feel free to reach out to me if you want to talk about it in more detail, because I don't want anyone to leave this thinking, okay, I'm going to go get involved right now and then apply next year because Michelle said I need extracurriculars. That's actually probably too soon. You should already be involved in something. So like I said, reach out to us and we can talk about it in more detail. We just talked about this, but school rounds, acceptance rates, these are all things that you should factor in when you're deciding whether to apply in round 2. And then, of course, your GMAT, your GRE score, are you competitive? Where are you in the application? And we are going to talk about that in a moment here. But these are the questions that you're essentially asking yourself. What will my profile look like? Look, this gentleman is thinking about it. Now, next round, next year, these are some of the things to think about to help you decide. And these are the types of questions I would ask you to help you decide. So here's a checklist of the most common minimum things you're going to need to apply to a business school. I have bolded the items that are especially important now because everything else, as you can see, is either paperwork, like the application, or gathering your transcripts, or it's things that, frankly, you need to have already been working on, your activities, networking. Of course, your GPA is already over with, and so hopefully you have a good one to be competitive. But if nothing else, need to know that these 3 areas at the top are especially important to your application, and you need to be working on those already or get to work right now. I probably will repeat that a few more times. But this first one after CV or resume is the 1 to 5 essays per school. I purposely listed that right at the top because that tends to be one of the most time-consuming parts of your application. This is why admissions consultants like us are constantly hounding you poor candidates to get to work, because it is a time-consuming process. And we have found that it's the most important part of the application after things like your GMAT, your work experience, etc. So I keep bringing up the GMAT and the GRE. So of course there's the obvious question, have you taken it? If you haven't even taken it yet, well, again, I can't make a blanket statement because you might be acing all your practice tests, and it could be that you will go in and get a great score. But if not, if you've only recently begun studying, or if you need to retake it, which is extremely common. I think they say the average candidate takes the GMAT 3 times. I'm not sure about the GRE, but I'd be willing to bet it's about the same. These are things that you should be thinking about in terms of applying round 2. As I've put in great big bold letters here, and I think I mentioned it earlier, this doesn't mean that you can't apply round 2, but it means that you need to find a way to be able to dedicate a lot of time both to studying and to work on your applications. Holidays are coming up. That helps some candidates. Other candidates, it hurts them because the family's been planning a trip to Mexico all year. So if you know you're not going to be able to work on your applications during the holiday season, that's another factor for you to be considering, but we'll talk more about that in a moment. And then of course, the obvious question, how does your score compare if you have already taken it? Is it enough to be competitive, or do you need to retake it? So letters of recommendation. I really thought that this deserved a slide of its own, because too often I learn that candidates think of their letter of recommendation as being something where they simply need to identify someone, ask them, and then they take it from there. Like you have the questionnaire sent to them, or you give them the information, excuse me, and then you're done, right? Wrong. Not only should you go through a careful process of selecting your recommenders, and I have other presentations online where you can learn about that or come talk to me, but after you've selected them, there's a few questions you need to ask yourself. So going back to tying this to applying round 2, are they already working on your letters of recommendation? They should be. Are they prepared? And I know I skipped something, so I'm going to back up for just a second here. The reason I thought I'd go ahead and put this in, are they supportive of your decision? You would be surprised how often we have candidates reach out to us for assistance in determining a new recommendation. In other words, a different recommendation, a recommender, excuse me, because after getting the approval, they've begun to realize that actually this recommender might not be the best fit for a variety of different reasons. It's not always malicious, but it is important to make sure that the person that you're choosing is going to be an enthusiastic supporter of yours, both in this process and that they'll continue to be a champion for you at work. Again, we can talk more on that in detail if you'd like to reach out to me. But moving on with this checklist here, when I say prepared, here's the 3 things I'm referring to. Are they prepared to talk about the right attributes? For example, the admissions committees probably don't care that you're always on time, but they do care that not only do you work well in teams, but you often take the reins to lead the team. To emphasize the fit per school. I should have also underlined this one and put stars around it and made it flash and blink for you. You do not want your recommenders writing the same thing over and over again. And side hint, just like you wouldn't want to write the same thing over and over again in your essays. Quite the opposite. Everything should be catered to the school to show what an excellent fit you are, and the recommendation letters are no exception. And then finally, to complement your application narrative. That goes back to what I was just talking about not having the same thing for every school. You should have an application narrative, and then it should be broken down into specific narratives for the schools that you're applying to. So how do they get all this information to be prepared? You, hence my fancy arrow here. So this is why I said at the beginning, you don't just pick them and then assume they're good. Sit down with them, offer them some assistance in perhaps refreshing their memory on different accomplishments that you've had. Let them know how you are presenting yourself to the schools. And then again, I forgive me, I'm doing more shameless plugs today than I thought I would, but think about working with an expert like ARINGO who can give you more specific tips about making sure your recommenders are prepared. So we've gone over a lot of different things today. I wanted to give you kind of a final thoughts, if you will, from ARINGO. First of all, I think at some point in the presentation, I've probably given you each one of these, but these are the ones that I wanted to make sure were really driven home. First of all, an MBA is a serious undertaking, not just the degree itself, but the process of applying. I want to remind you that most candidates have been planning for at least 2 years. And it bears repeating that serious candidates have been working on their applications for several months now. This does not exclude you if you have recently decided to go to business school or only recently decided to apply now, but it does mean a careful self-analysis of where you're at, where your recommenders are at. After all, this isn't a process about just you. So do take into consideration that this is not a simple process, as I read on this next bullet point of, hey, let's just give it a try. And if it doesn't work out, I'll reapply next year. It's not that easy. Reapplications are tough. You have to be able to tell them why you're a better candidate than you were the first time along. And to be candid with you, telling them that you simply realize that you should have been more prepared or that you should have done a better job is not going to get you in the second time either. Do get it right the first time. If you know that round 2 is going to be a big rush for you, think about the next round, or as we talked about earlier, think about next year. I did make another note here about seeking professional experienced advice. I thought I'd underline experience because you might not necessarily work with an admissions consultant, but make sure that the people that you are talking to are experienced with MBAs, because any MBA alum, professor, admissions consultant, former AdCom committee will tell you that the process is quite different than applying to other graduate programs. So you want to make sure that whomever is assisting you and giving you tips is familiar with this industry. Time is ticking. Have I thumped you over the head enough with that today? Do expect that much of your time is over the next couple months is going to need to be dedicated to the application process. And as I mentioned earlier in the presentation, holidays, this is a personal thing that for some candidates, and this helps a lot. It gives them a few days in November and a few days in December to dedicate just to the process of applying, which is great, but others find that the holidays are actually going to take them away. So you should plan accordingly. And then last but not least, if after this presentation today, or combined with lots of other information you've been considering, you decide that you're actually going to apply later, be it round 3, round 4, round 5, or next year, that doesn't mean that you're done now. You should go ahead and get to work now. If you're applying in future years, think about undertaking extracurricular activities. Be on the lookout for opportunities at work to show your own leadership skills. Even if that doesn't mean that you can actually get a formal promotion, are there projects you can oversee? Can you implement initiatives where you could measure an outcome? These are just some very high-level ideas here. Again, ARINGO is always happy to offer a complimentary consultation and give you some suggestions of how you can be even more prepared in the future. But just a thought that even if you attended today out of curiosity, or you are thinking it's going to be in the future, go ahead and get to work now. It is literally never too soon to start preparing for your MBA application. So I know I've said it again, but I think it bears repeating. We really are here to help you. ARINGO offers complimentary consultations, not to mention, if you really don't want to talk to me, because by the way, if you're in North or South America, you will talk to me if you reach out to us. One of my colleagues, if you are elsewhere. If you don't want to actually speak to us, still feel free to check out our website, because we have so many complimentary tools, essay examples and tips, all of the top 20 schools deadlines and application materials are there. If you like the idea of having one spot to see them, tips on making the most out of campus visits, interviews, have fun. Last but not least, the most popular tool on our website is we have a complimentary chances calculator where you can plug in information about yourself to get an idea of how competitive you would be at a variety of different business schools.
And then at the end, it will ask you if you'd even like to talk to us to get a more personal answer. So don't hesitate to check us out and avail yourself of the free resources. But if you would like to hear more about how we can help you strengthen your chances of getting into a top school, do come and register for a free session. I would love to talk to you. Last but not least, I've put my email address on here. That's michelleM@aringo.com, M for my last name, michelleM@aringo.com. Feel free to email me directly if you have questions after this webinar today that you haven't asked online. I'd be more than happy to assist. Definitely reach out to me if you'd like to talk about your situation specifically. So I made sure to leave time for questions today, and I'm going to take a look and see what types of questions I have here. Oh, Jeremy, good morning to you. And let's see, another candidate, no, oh good, this must have been while I was talking about when did you decide. So thank you for pointing this out. One candidate said that they actually decided in August of this year that they want to go to business school. And so round 2 really was the best possibility. So just so you know, I agree with you completely. I think that round 2 was a smart choice since you just decided in August. Hopefully you are already working on your application. But feel free, as I keep saying, and I want you guys to know that this is not, I'm not attempting to just have you come work with us. We really are here to help. So I want to give you the best advice possible here. I think you made a smart choice in aiming for round 2, and hopefully you're already well on your way. Let's hear. I just got a question that's very profile specific, asking how smart it is for an Indian gal with a 710 to apply to UCLA in round 2. I would need to know more about you than just that. Please feel free to reach out for a complimentary consultation. Just go to aringo.com, and right at the top you'll see register for a free consultation. Or you can check out our chances calculator, and after you've used that, you're welcome to also sign up for a chance to speak with one of us. Let's see, this is also a pretty profile specific question. GMAT score 680, rest of application is top notch. I'll take your word on that. Would HBS Stanford be better if I apply round 2 or wait another year? You know, I still would need to know more. First of all, I would need to make sure I agree that your application is top notch. I would also need to see what the rest of your profile looks like. Again, please feel free to reach out for a complimentary consultation or check out our chances calculator. So for those of you that are listening and thinking of sending in questions, I probably should have said that first thing, that I'm probably not going to be able to tell you right here in the webinar whether or not I think you should definitely apply. Factor in all these other things that we've talked about today, and then check us out. This is something that's much better to have an individual conversation. Oh, this is a great question. How good is USC Marshall for human capital consulting? You know, I have to admit I don't know as much about the human capital part of things. I do recommend USC Marshall for candidates interested in various types of consulting. If you would like to email me that question, I will speak to some of my admissions consultants from UCLA and USC to get their thoughts on that and give you some information right from the horse's mouth. And I have just a few more minutes here for questions if anyone else has any questions. Hope this has been useful for you today in deciding whether or not to apply round 2 or this year in general. At the end of the day, most of these considerations, regardless of round, come down to the same questions about how prepared you are, how prepared others are that are going to be supporting you. If nothing else, I hope you've taken away today that this is a serious undertaking that requires some time. So if nothing else, I hope that that's what you will remember in making your decision. Okay, it looks like, oh, let's see, there is one more question. Oh, okay, great question. Hi, Michelle, thanks for the webinar. You're so welcome. How competitive is INSEAD compared to HSA, LBS, and IE in terms of the entire admission process? I do find that INSEAD is more competitive than each school. Oh, excuse me, with the exception of LBS. I think LBS and INSEAD are pretty similar in that respect. They're both top 10 programs, and they're both at the top of the European MBA ranking. I would, with that said though, both HSA and IE are highly reputable programs. That doesn't mean that I would take it easy on those either. So thank you for asking. One advantage you have though is for INSEAD, they have 5 rounds. So as I was talking about earlier, round 2 is still a great time to apply. So is round 3. I don't start getting nervous about INSEAD applications until we're approaching rounds 4 and 5. My best tip for you with INSEAD is 1, international experience and perspective. That's crucial to them. And in addition, be well prepared for that interview. You might have seen at the beginning, we have a very impressive admissions rate at INSEAD. I believe we're nearing 80% of our candidates have been accepted to INSEAD over the years. So feel free to reach out for help. And good luck. Okay, everyone, I'm going to go ahead and wrap it up because it looks like we are at our time, but it has been a sincere pleasure. Thank you for dealing with me and my cold, my nose. I'm definitely still not here sounding 100%, but it has been a lot of fun to share this info with you. And again, this is such a personal decision. I would love to help any of you make it. So reach out and I'll see if I can offer some unique perspective on your profile and your questions. Hope you all have a great day. Thanks again for joining.